I want to see the coffee shop that they do ministry out of, and see the other churches and all of that we're part of.
You'll have to bring me back some beans from the coffee shop.
Yeah,
you got to do
I'll
something
that.
to make up. You're going to miss our big music
I
Sunday,
know.
Pastor.
I'm just trying to figure out how could I get there, do what I need to do, and.
No. You've been delaying that Germany trip too long, so I'm glad that
It's
you're
been
going to
over
do
5 years. They asked me 5 or 6 years ago to come and do their graduation, and I promised I would do it, and had to cancel on them in the last minute, which I hate to do. But anyway, and that's why I'm dressed like I am. You asked,
Right, you're
I
heading
don't
to Georgia.
normally. I'm headed to South Georgia.
Yeah, you got your
I
driving
got about a
clothes on.
6 to 7 hour drive ahead of me.
You're going to put your driving gloves on when you get out there, right?
I'm going to preach tonight. I'm going to jump in the bed, sleep for a little bit, and then I'm going to get up so I can come back. And
yeah, you got lots of stuff to do. You got to meet with me tomorrow.
I got to meet with you. So you decide
He's
where
still
you
my
want to,
seminary supervisor.
where you want to meet for lunch.
Ruth's Chris. Oh, wait, it's my turn to pay. McDonald's.
Yeah.
We'll go to
Okay.
McDonald's
All right.
tomorrow for lunch. Got it. Man, we got so much to talk about today. Hey, apologies to everybody that had trouble hearing us last week. We know that we had a fountain in the background because we were out there. Was it Honolulu? I didn't really pay attention.
Yeah. Waikiki.
But we're back here in the studio, so you can hear us loud and clear. You said, now we forgot to talk about this last week. Shame on us. But we forgot to talk about the whole Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura thing again.
Yeah, I was told that I was in error.
Oh, really? There was error in how you presented that story?
It was that Robin Ventura did something in that inning, in that single inning. The same guy got 3 hits in one inning. Boom, boom, boom. He's the only guy in baseball that got 3 hits.
He's the only one that ever got 3 hits in one inning.
He got 3 hits right in the head by Nolan.
Now that's an excellent. I can appreciate a good dad joke when I hear one. 3 hits in one inning. Do you know that? I didn't know this until this past week. I guess shame on me. That there's like whole YouTube channels devoted to dad jokes.
No.
It's just people that sit across each
doubt.
other.
I don't doubt
They
it.
just stare at each other and tell dad jokes until somebody laughs. I got a couple of them down. Here, I'm going to tell you a couple dad jokes today. I guarantee this is going to be great. One of my favorites. I told this to the worship team yesterday. Now, Pastor, did you know that before the crowbar was invented, crows had to drink at home?
Oh, my word.
Oh, man.
Save yourself.
What do you call a factory? So stupid. What do you call a factory that makes products that are just okay? A satisfactory.
I'm going to hold my nose on these.
I know that you were struggling with scheduling things this week. I'm afraid for my calendar, its days are numbered.
Oh, my Lord, have mercy. Oh, gosh.
Joanna says these jokes are so corny that now we've been disconnected from the internet.
I'm on Hee-Haw.
I know. Are you he or haw?
I'm picking. Are you? And you're grinning.
Oh boy. All right.
Gosh, did you ever watch that?
No, I think I missed that one. I've seen Andy Griffith. I saw.
Did you never watch Hee-Haw?
No, I
Boy,
missed.
you
I
missed one
it.
of the joys of growing up. Golly.
I'm sorry
With
about
Junior
that.
Samples, Lulu Roman, Grandpa,
Junior Samples.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Roy
just the stuff
Clark,
that I would eat at Costco.
Buck Owens. Good night. Watched it every week.
I tell you what I did. I watched a lot of Gilligan's Island and Leave It to Beaver. I watched a bunch of both of those.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always think about that Leave It to Beaver episode where the girl tells Wally that he has a pug nose. And he doesn't know what she means. So he buys this nose reshaper and he wears it every night.
Oh, Eddie Haskell used to get me. I just wanted somebody to beat the fire out of him.
Well, he was so slick.
Obnoxious.
But he was always so respectful to the parents when he was talking to them.
I know. He'd come around. Oh, hey, Miss Cleaver, you look so nice. You're just thinking you are just a snake oil salesman.
That's what he was.
He was.
Back when
He
TV was TV.
Yeah.
That was the
They
real.
actually had to be funny. They had not all of this junk that they have today. They actually had to think about what they were writing.
Man, I was thinking about well, this could go down a rabbit hole. The episode where Beaver and Wally are out and they decide they're going to camp out in the backyard.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
and then it
remember
just
that.
starts to rain and the water starts coming in. It's just a disaster. And one of them and Beaver says, you know, Eddie told me if you touch the top of a tent when it's raining that the water starts to come through. And Wally's like, that's not true. And he touches the tent and the water starts coming through. And Beaver's like, man, that Eddie sure is a wise guy. As if it's somehow his fault.
Oh, gosh. You know, that guy just died that
Which
played
one?
Wally.
Really?
Yeah. He
Man.
passed away like 2 weeks ago.
God rest his soul.
And I can't remember what it was. He had something, but I can't remember what it was. They announced it before he died. His death, that he had died before he actually died, and he died the next day.
So he didn't get
And
it.
they came back out and said, you know, now it's official that he has died.
He didn't get a chance to say the reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated.
No, that's just Twain.
That's one of my favorites.
Isn't it, though? Yeah.
Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens.
Mm-hmm.
What
Foghorn Leghorn.
my favorite? My favorite Samuel Clemens quote is when he said, "When I was 18, my father was an idiot, but by the time
Yeah.
I was 25, I was impressed with how much he'd improved
Yeah,
or how
yeah.
much he learned since
That
then."
is so true.
Yes.
I tell parents that all the time. They come in, you know, I said, listen, you will be shocked after their first year in college how smart you've become.
Okay. Right. Well, some of it depends on what college you send them to. Because sometimes they'll come back with a very different perspective.
Oh, yeah.
But enough about Alabama. Let's talk a little bit about the sermon from
Oh, okay.
yesterday.
All right.
We got there. Here's one of the things that I thought was so interesting. I've got a couple of questions, but first I want to start with just something that I love that you did.
What did I do?
Well, you talked about how the whole book is about forgiveness,
Oh, okay.
even though the word forgiveness is never used.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love the example you gave. You talked about Romeo and Juliet. You have their whole scene of professing love to one another,
Yeah. Well,
but the word love is never used.
yeah, yeah.
I thought that
think
was
it may
perfect.
be used in something about the love of the sky or something another in there, but they never said "I love you" in that whole thing. It's devoid, literally, of that. But all it does is draw attention. That's all it is. That's what it's about. Same thing with the Book of Esther.
Right.
You know, people have debated should the Book of Esther be in the Bible, which is, well, yes, it should
Answer
be,
is yes.
because the whole thing just constantly is pointing to the sovereignty of God, who rules even over pagan rulers.
Yes. Well, and that's the kind of thing where when you read it, you can just see his. I feel like you can just. It's self-evident. Same thing.
Yeah.
You read this Romeo and Juliet. You read Shakespeare. Well, it's clear what's happening here, and you're saying the same thing about Philemon.
Yeah, it's a literary device.
Paul and we. This was probably the longest chunk that we're going to study because you're planning on finishing up this coming Sunday.
Yeah.
So it was 11 verses. This was really the meat of what Paul is saying to Philemon and
Yeah.
to the church of Colossae, and he's saying like, all right, a lot has changed here, which leads to my question. This is just my fault. This was not your fault, but I was unclear. Did Onesimus actually go to prison for something he did, or did he just go seek out Paul in prison?
Now, that's the odd thing. Really, in the first Roman imprisonment that Paul was in, he was in a rented house
Oh, okay.
where he would have to pay for that.
Oh, interesting.
They wouldn't even feed you if you were in prison. You had to have somebody that would bring you food
Oh, wow.
in there. You know, we are so in our Western mindset, and we think what prison is like. It was nothing like that in that day. So Paul, in his first Roman imprisonment, was literally not in the Roman dungeon in the
He was in a
maritime.
house.
He was in a house, but he was chained between the Praetorian Guard. There would be at least 2 Praetorians chained to him, one on this side, one on this side, and they changed about every 4 hours. day and night, constant changing of that. So he was under house arrest there. And he could have visitors. People could come see him. He could have his doctor. Luke was there with him. As he mentions here at the end of this, he comes, he says, Epaphras, my fellow prisoner in Christ Jesus, greets you, as do Mark. Now, do you see that in verse 24, as do Mark?
I need to get it open. I will when I open it up.
Mark right there. Now, I've got a real question in my mind, and I don't know if I'll answer it Sunday or not. Is this the Mark that accompanied Barnabas and Mark and Saul on that first mission trip, who turned around and went back home? And then Barnabas comes back as they get ready to go on the second missionary trip, and he says, I want Mark to go with us. And Paul says, absolutely not.
Right, the sharp disagreement among them, yeah.
Yes. So, because you come over into 2 Timothy, and in 2 Timothy, Paul is asking Timothy, come to me, get to me quickly, and when you come, bring me a cloak, bring me a coat,
the parchments.
Bring the parchments, and bring Mark. So is Mark with him on this first Roman imprisonment? Because in his second Roman imprisonment, Mark is obviously not there, and he is asking Timothy, please bring Mark with you. He's useful to me.
So you're saying by Sunday you're going to have that all figured out?
No, I'm not. I don't know. Is it that Mark, or is it a different Mark?
Difficult to say. I definitely can't say. I'm sure that many scholars have postulated about
Aristarchus is with him. Demas before, is that the same Demas that, he's left me? Demas left me back in 2 Timothy. Demas left me because he loves this present world.
I've seen that. I mean, some commentators do think so. I've read that before, saying that, like, this is just a preview of the close relationship that they had and then eventually deserted
And
him.
Luke is there, who is my fellow workers. So he's got people that are there. He's able to write. He writes Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon from that. Dr. Ryrie says that was all in 61.
He believes
he was
that's
there
the
from 61 to 62, 62 to 63. Paul was in that first Roman imprisonment.
I would say so. Dr. Charles Ryrie says that was A.D. 61 when these were written.
Yeah.
I think just everything that you just said is a great example of why it's useful to study those final greetings across the different epistles.
You come through most commentaries and there's nothing on the last. And the fact of the matter is they are to me, they are some of the best preaching when you get to those last verses. They're so insightful.
Yes.
You begin to put pieces together, like, who is Demas? Well, he was in that house where Paul was under house arrest. Now, I don't mean that the guy was under a house arrest when I say it's like he was at, in condo C on the,
like
7th green at
like we were last week.
The Dallas Country Club.
Sure.
Yeah, it's nothing like that, not that kind of house.
But you're just saying it wasn't the Roman dungeon.
It was not the dungeon.
And there were visitors available.
That's right. I've been in a maritime dungeon.
I've seen it too. Yeah.
My wife banishes me there from time to time.
Oh,
no,
yes,
when I've been.
I wonder
to Rome,
why you had that in the backyard.
I've been there a number of times, and you stop and you think you get down in those things, and they're just holes in the ground.
Literally, yeah.
Holes in the ground.
With
You're
some
down
stone.
there, and you think of that thing being packed out with guys. People dropping food down in there to you.
Well, did you see that movie? Was it called The Apostle Paul? They made that movie. Jim Caviezel was in it. Jeremy Irons played the Apostle Paul. What was it called? But they did a good job of that, where they just throw him down in this hole and he falls. I think he breaks his leg or something like that.
Yeah.
It's called Paul the Apostle. Sorry, okay. Paul the Apostle. I've told you about it before. I really love it.
I can't find it. I wanted to watch that.
Oh, really?
The only apostle I could find was Robert Duvall, and that was just wild.
That was an interesting. That was a really interesting movie.
I've never seen that.
Oh, okay.
But I've seen
It's interesting. It's probably it's kind of like The Leap of Faith with Steve Martin. It's worth watching, kind of see how man, that's a fun movie. Leap of Faith. That's a blast from the past. Okay, well now I know what to get. I'll get that for you. I always struggle to figure out what gifts to give you. I'll find a Blu-ray of it. You got a Blu-ray player?
No. I never had a Blu-ray player.
I'll get you a DVD of the positive. Because the last scene is so good. I've told you about this before, right? Because at the end, he's executed. But when he and then you get to see what he sees as he goes to be with the Lord, and all the people that he murdered,
right?
all the people that he murdered embrace him as their brother in Christ now.
Wow,
oh, it's so
wow,
good.
That's wild.
If they were Pentecostal, they'd be running all over the place.
Thank you for telling me how the movie ends.
You're welcome. Well, I owed you one for ruining Frozen 2 for me and the rest of the church those 2-3 years ago. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, the greetings at the end of Philemon. So you're going to talk some about that this coming week. You're
well, I'm
going
to go through something. I'm going to do something because I've got verse 19 through 25 to preach.
Well, we need to get you out of here pretty soon. I think I had one more question. I thought you mentioned this in passing, and I don't like that. What's the difference between forgiveness and absolution? I thought that was interesting because you talked about it in context of
don't confuse. We confuse forgiveness with a lot of different things. And I'm trying to think now because late yesterday afternoon I start looking at what I'm going to do next, and I start getting my mind on that. Don't confuse forgiveness with
like cheap grace, you mean?
Yeah, with rescuing somebody. Don't confuse that. You can forgive somebody without bailing them out of the problem that they're in.
Oh, that's a good. I see what
the
you're
hole
saying.
that they've dug themselves in. Now, you probably should in some kind of way, but don't confuse. Don't think, because so many of us we start dredging up arguments as to why I shouldn't forgive. We should forgive. But now, don't start equating forgiveness with absolution or giving somebody a pass or enabling them. And don't confuse, forgiveness with, now I've got to suspend good judgment. Mm-hmm. For example, you've got a brother-in-law who's come and you've loaned him thousands of dollars 3 or 4 different times, and he's never paid you back. And he always tells you, I'm going to pay you back,
right.
and he's not going to pay you back. Well, what do? Well, at some point, you're a good steward. You're to be a good steward of what God's given to you. And at some point, if you're able to give him something, give him something. But if you're not able to do that, and you're not comfortable with doing that, then you're not obligated to do that. God doesn't expect you to suspend good judgment, but to forgive. So don't confuse the two, is what I was saying in those 3 points that I was making. Forgiveness is different than enabling somebody.
Well, I've read that book, When Helping Hurts,
Yes.
talking about, and that's a little bit different because that's more like in the
mission field.
right?
Yeah.
But it's a similar principle in that, like, yes, you're supposed to get, if someone asks you for your tunic, you give him your cloak as well, and if he asks you to go with him 1 mile, you go with him 2. But then that's combined with everything it says in the Proverbs about, like, well, don't what is it? Don't loan out your money at interest. Don't take on somebody else's debt. Things like that. Specifically with money.
Well,
that's
biblical wisdom,
Right.
And I'll just give you an illustration. I've had relatives come and say, "Boy, would you loan me?" No, I will not loan you, but I'm going to give you this.
Sure.
And I just give it to you because I don't want the heartache that
Right.
goes with, and I am not going to. And then again, I've had
That's good.
younger relatives come to me and say, "Hey, would you loan me?" And I've said yes. And I'm going to put you up on a payment plan because this is going to help you learn how to be responsible.
Right.
And I'm going to hold you to it. And I've done that to help them grow.
Sure.
So,
but if they never pay you back, like you said, at some point, it's like, all right.
At some point now, I'm done. You don't owe me anything. Forget it. I forgive you. But now I'm not going to loan you anymore.
That's such a tough thing because really what we're talking about is the line between just compassion and giving freely and then also tough love. Yeah. And really that's the question of wisdom, and we have to think about those things if we're going to effectively disciple the people around us.
And, you've got a host of things. What have you been doing with your money? Well, I've been throwing it away.
Right.
Or is it for a medical issue that you really do need versus I just want to take my wife to New York and see a
Right,
play,
right.
for, kind of deal.
Well, I guess in the example of Christ, you can even see different ways that not only he directs his disciples and deals with them differently in different situations, but even the different methods that he uses when he heals people. It's not always exactly clear, but why does he just heal this blind person with a touch, and then why does this person have to go wash in the water? And that I think that kind of thing. I mean, you can correct me if that's an incorrect application, but you can see that there's different ways of dealing with different people while still helping them with their ultimate need, which is for Christ.
The issue of forgiveness is separate than all of that.
Okay.
I do forgive you. I do forgive you of your. And then
Oh,
again,
right, yeah.
you have people that come up and say, "All right, I'm coming to apologize. I'm sorry, but now I don't want you to do this, or something, something like that." Well, listen, when you're coming and asking for an apology, you're not in the position of making demands on somebody. I mean, I did not come to the Lord Jesus Christ and say, "Okay, Lord, I'm asking you to forgive me of my sins, but now I'm expecting this, and this to happen."
There's no leverage there.
No.
There's no leverage.
That's where the spirit of humility and a repentant spirit, a genuine repentant spirit comes in.
Well, and Philemon is having to recognize his debt before the Lord. And that's what Paul's appealing to and saying you should forgive Onesimus.
Yep.
Really interesting stuff. Well, I hope you travel safely today,
Good.
Pastor.
Thank you.
And, give them heaven down there in Georgia.
I'll do it.
And, hey, you guys, if you missed the midweek kickoff, we're going to be back this Wednesday at 6:30. And then I know that in the
Man, I heard great stuff about this past Wednesday night.
there's two big classes that are going on. I know one is continuing with Kathy Napier, and we're getting those recordings online soon, right? Yeah. The first one's going to be up today from last week, so you can catch up with that. And then we're even improving the recordings for this coming week, so we're excited about that. And then the class with the theological truths, help me with the title on that one. Bible doctrine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bible doctrine. We've got a different teacher this week. I know that Pastor Barry started last week, and it might be Pastor Patrick is going in. I wish I could go to all these. I'm in there with the choir.
Yeah.
And if you want to join the choir, you should feel free to do that. We had 2 new choir members this
That was
past
great.
week.
They were, the music's always good.
You're sweet. Thank
It's
you.
always good. Always good. Great worship here.
Okay. We're going to let you go. Love you guys.
See ya. All right. Let me go.